Speaking test instructions. The speaking test is 20 minutes. There are 8 tasks in the speaking test. Please try your best to answer all the questions.
Start speaking now. Time is up. 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 Start speaking now. Time is up.
Nathan. Being asked to mentor a difficult employee represents both an opportunity and a significant challenge that requires honest self-assessment before accepting. Nevertheless, this decision should consider both your career goals and your actual capacity to handle a demanding mentoring relationship. First and foremost, evaluate whether you genuinely have the time, emotional energy, and interpersonal skills needed to effectively mentor someone who has already proven challenging for multiple colleagues. Furthermore, successful mentoring requires patience, excellent communication skills, ability to provide constructive feedback, and willingness to invest substantial time in someone else's development rather than your own projects. Additionally, consider that mentoring a difficult employee carries real risks. If the mentorship fails or the employee continues causing problems, some managers might unfairly associate you with those failures rather than crediting your effort. Moreover, difficult employees often resist feedback, may not appreciate mentoring efforts, and sometimes create emotional stress for mentors who invest heavily in trying to help people who don't actually want to change. Although your manager framed this as optional, suggesting it could help your career advancement creates implicit pressure that might make declining feel risky for your professional standing. Consequently, if you decide to accept, set clear boundaries and expectations up front, including defined time commitments, specific behavioral goals for the mentee, and agreement from management about how success will be measured. Additionally, ensure your manager commits to providing you with support, training in mentoring techniques, and protection from being blamed if the employee continues having problems despite your best efforts. Despite the career advancement potential, consider whether this opportunity aligns with your actual professional development goals or simply adds burden without meaningful benefit. The key is making an authentic decision based on realistic assessment of your capacity and interest, rather than accepting out of obligation or fear of disappointing management. 3 years ago, I was given the seemingly impossible task of organizing our company's largest industry conference, with only 6 weeks of preparation time instead of the usual 6 months. Our originally scheduled event coordinator had suddenly resigned, and the conference contracts, venue deposits, and speaker commitments were already in place with no option to postpone. Furthermore, I had never organized an event of this scale, expecting 500 attendees, requiring coordination of 30 speakers, managing vendor relationships, and handling complex logistics for catering, technology, and accommodations. The deadline felt absolutely impossible because experienced event planners had told me that conferences of this size typically require at least 4 to 6 months of dedicated planning. Additionally, I was still responsible for my regular job duties, so I couldn't devote full-time attention to conference planning despite the urgency. To tackle this overwhelming challenge, I immediately broke the enormous project into specific categories: speakers, venue logistics, attendee registration, marketing, vendors, and technology. Moreover, I created a detailed spreadsheet with every single task, assigned each a specific deadline working backward from the conference date, and color-coded items by urgency. I also quickly identified tasks that absolutely had to be done versus nice to have elements I could eliminate to save time. Most importantly, I asked for help rather than trying to handle everything alone. I recruited volunteers from different departments, delegated specific responsibilities to team members, and hired 2 temporary contractors to handle registration and attendee communication. Additionally, I established daily check-in meetings to track progress and immediately address any problems that arose. I also worked extended hours including weekends, and I communicated constantly with speakers and vendors to ensure nothing fell through the cracks. The conference was ultimately successful, with 480 attendees, smooth logistics, and positive feedback from participants and speakers. However, the experience was exhausting and I was completely burned out afterward. This challenge taught me that seemingly impossible deadlines can sometimes be met through extreme effort, strategic prioritization, and effective delegation, but also that success often comes at significant personal cost and isn't sustainable long-term. This vibrant illustration depicts a lively rooftop urban garden workshop taking place on a sunny weekend afternoon, high above a bustling city skyline. Initially, the scene establishes a warm, productive atmosphere as a diverse group of community members gathers among raised planting beds, filled with leafy vegetables, colorful flowers, and climbing vines. The rooftop space is thoughtfully organized, with wooden planters, gardening tools, and small chalkboard signs labeling each crop variety. In the foreground, a middle-aged woman wearing a green apron and wide-brimmed sun hat is kneeling beside a raised bed, carefully transplanting seedlings into fresh soil. Meanwhile, a teenage boy standing next to her is holding a small watering can, attentively watching her technique with an eager expression. Subsequently, both individuals appear deeply engaged in conversation, suggesting a mentorship dynamic unfolding naturally within this green urban space. On the left side of the scene, a group of 3 elderly participants is seated around a foldable table, examining seed packets and referencing a laminated planting guide spread across the surface. Additionally, a young woman in a yellow t-shirt is writing notes on a clipboard, appearing to document the workshop's progress. Furthermore, several potted herb plants, including basil, rosemary, and mint, are arranged neatly along a low brick wall beside them, adding rich texture and color to the composition. The background reveals a sweeping panoramic view of glass office towers and apartment buildings, stretching across the horizon beneath a clear blue sky with soft white clouds. Furthermore, a facilitator in an orange vest is standing near a portable whiteboard, gesturing toward a diagram of a composting system while participants listen attentively. What makes this setting particularly meaningful is how it beautifully captures the growing urban sustainability movement, demonstrating that communities can cultivate connection, education, and environmental responsibility even amidst a concrete cityscape. Initially, the rooftop gardening instructor will complete her educational presentation about composting systems, whereas participants will take detailed notes on sustainable urban agriculture techniques. Subsequently, the woman and young boy planting tomatoes will carefully water their newly transplanted seedlings, while simultaneously, elderly residents playing cards at the table will take breaks to admire the flourishing vegetables and herbs. Meanwhile, the volunteer coordinator taking inventory will presumably document plant growth and harvest yields for community records, and consequently, this data might inform future rooftop garden expansion projects. Furthermore, as the afternoon progresses, more building residents will arrive to tend their assigned plots or simply enjoy the peaceful green space. Despite the urban high-rise setting, this rooftop oasis provides remarkable opportunities for food production and community building. Nevertheless, gardeners must remain vigilant about watering schedules during hot weather. In addition, the diverse selection of herbs, vegetables, and flowering plants creates a thriving ecosystem that attracts beneficial pollinators. In conclusion, this innovative rooftop community garden will continue demonstrating how urban spaces can be transformed into productive green infrastructure, simultaneously addressing food security, environmental sustainability, social connection, and mental well-being for city dwellers. Margaret, I understand your preference for the online digital auction format, but I believe the silent auction represents the better choice for our hospital fundraising event. First and foremost, silent auctions create a social atmosphere where attendees can network, mingle, and enjoy the event while participating in bidding, making the fundraiser feel like a celebration rather than just a transaction. Furthermore, the in-person format allows us to showcase auction items physically, letting bidders examine jewelry, artwork, and experience packages up close, which typically generates more enthusiasm and higher bids than viewing photos online. Additionally, silent auctions create natural competitive energy as bidders see others approaching bid sheets, triggering psychological impulses to increase bids that are harder to replicate in digital formats, where bidding feels more abstract. Moreover, hosting an in-person silent auction provides opportunities for speeches about the hospital's mission, patient testimonials, and emotional appeals that motivate generous giving in ways that online platforms cannot match. Although the online format reaches wider audiences geographically, our hospital fundraiser benefits most from engaging our local community who use hospital services and feel personal connection to our mission. Consequently, the social networking aspect of silent auctions often leads to additional donations beyond auction items as attendees feel emotionally connected to the cause through personal interactions. Despite requiring careful bid tracking and staffing, silent auction management is straightforward with proper volunteer coordination and bid sheet organization. The live auctioneer option, while entertaining, requires expensive professional services that reduce net fundraising proceeds. The online auction, though convenient, lacks the emotional energy and community building that drives exceptional fundraising results. Don't you think creating a memorable community event that builds lasting relationships with donors is more valuable than the convenience of online bidding? Margaret, while I appreciate the social benefits of a silent auction, I strongly believe the live auctioneer event represents the most effective fundraising approach for our hospital campaign. First and foremost, professional auctioneers are experts at creating excitement, urgency, and competitive bidding wars that drive auction prices significantly higher than silent bidding, where people simply write numbers on sheets. Furthermore, live auctions create theatrical entertainment that makes the fundraiser memorable and enjoyable, rather than just another charity obligation, encouraging attendees to stay longer and participate more actively. Additionally, skilled auctioneers read the room, identify potential high bidders, and use professional techniques to encourage competitive bidding that maximizes revenue in ways that silent formats cannot replicate. Moreover, the focused attention of live auctions means every item receives dedicated time and promotional presentation, whereas silent auction items often get overlooked if they're not positioned prominently or if bidders are distracted by socializing. Although hiring professional auctioneers costs money, experienced fundraising professionals consistently demonstrate that live auctions generate substantially higher total revenue that far exceeds the auctioneer fees. Consequently, the investment in professional services actually increases net proceeds rather than reducing them. When properly executed, despite the online format reaching more people, digital auctions lack the emotional immediacy and social pressure that motivate generous bidding. During live events, the silent auction option, while allowing networking, spreads attention across many items and creates passive rather than active engagement with the fundraising mission. Additionally, live auctions can incorporate strategic elements like fund a need appeals where the auctioneer solicits direct donations for specific hospital needs, often raising significant money beyond item sales. Don't you think maximizing fundraising revenue through professional expertise in entertainment value better serves our hospital's urgent financial needs? Lisa, I need to talk with you about something serious that's come to my attention. And I hope we can have an honest conversation. First and foremost, I value our friendship and would prefer to address this directly rather than letting it damage our relationship permanently. Nevertheless, I've learned from multiple people that you've been spreading false information about me to mutual friends. And I have to be honest that I'm both hurt and confused about why this is happening. Furthermore, I've heard specifically that you've been telling people things about my personal life and professional conduct that are simply not true. And these false statements are damaging my reputation among people we both care about. Additionally, I need to understand what's motivating this behavior because our friendship has always been important to me, and I can't comprehend why you would deliberately harm me this way. Moreover, if I've done something to upset you or if there's been some misunderstanding between us, I believe the appropriate response would be talking to me directly rather than discussing false information with others behind my back. Although confronting you about this is uncomfortable, I believe that real friendship requires honest communication even when it's difficult. And I'm giving you the opportunity to explain your perspective. Consequently, I need to hear directly from you whether these reports are accurate. And if so, why you felt the need to spread false information rather than addressing any concerns you had with me personally. Additionally, I need you to understand that continuing this behavior will permanently damage our friendship. Because I cannot maintain a relationship with someone who actively works to harm my reputation. Despite my hurt and anger about this situation, I'm approaching you directly because I believe you deserve the chance to explain yourself and potentially repair the damage that's been done. However, I also need you to commit to immediately stopping these conversations and, if possible, correcting the false information with people you've spoken to. Can you help me understand what's been happening and why? After learning that Lisa has been spreading false information about me, I've decided that the healthiest approach is to quietly distance myself from this friendship rather than engaging in confrontation that might escalate the situation. First and foremost, people who spread false information about friends often do so because of deeper personal issues, insecurities, or conflicts that confrontation rarely resolves and sometimes makes worse. Furthermore, directly confronting Lisa about the rumors might lead to denial, defensive anger, or even acceleration of the harmful behavior as she feels attacked and becomes more committed to justifying her actions. Additionally, engaging in conflict with someone who's already demonstrated willingness to damage my reputation could provide them with new material to twist and share with others, potentially making the situation worse rather than better. Moreover, the mutual friends who truly know my character will eventually recognize that the false information doesn't align with their direct experiences with me, allowing truth to naturally overcome lies without requiring my active intervention. Although walking away without confrontation might feel like allowing the behavior to go unchallenged, consider that dignified silence often speaks louder than angry confrontation and prevents me from being drawn into drama that could make me look petty or defensive. Consequently, I'll gradually reduce contact with Lisa, decline invitations to events where she'll be present, and focus my energy on nurturing relationships with friends who demonstrate loyalty and integrity. Additionally, if mutual friends ask me directly about the situation, I'll calmly state that I've heard Lisa has been sharing inaccurate information and that I prefer not to engage in conflicts or gossip, which positions me as the mature party taking the high road. Despite wanting closure or vindication, Sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal is simply removing toxic people from your life and moving forward without giving them the satisfaction of knowing they've affected you. This approach protects my emotional energy, prevents escalation, and allows Lisa to eventually face consequences of losing friendships through her own actions, rather than through my retaliation. Restaurants should not be required to make their complete recipes publicly available, as this requirement would violate intellectual property rights while providing minimal actual health and safety benefits. First and foremost, recipes represent proprietary trade secrets that give restaurants competitive advantages. Enforcing disclosure would eliminate incentives for culinary innovation and development of signature dishes that differentiate restaurants. Furthermore, existing health and safety regulations already require restaurants to disclose allergen information, nutritional content, and ingredient lists when relevant for consumer safety, making full recipe disclosure unnecessary for protecting public health. Additionally, recipes alone don't ensure food safety. Proper handling, storage, preparation temperatures, and sanitation practices matter far more than knowing exact ingredient proportions. And these operational practices are already subject to health inspection oversight. Moreover, requiring recipe disclosure would particularly harm small independent restaurants and family businesses whose signature recipes represent their primary competitive advantage against larger chain restaurants with extensive resources. Although transparency sounds beneficial, consider that most food safety issues result from contamination, improper cooking temperatures, or poor hygiene rather than secret ingredients that recipe disclosure would reveal. Consequently, strengthening food safety inspection systems, requiring clear allergen labeling, and improving nutritional information disclosure would better serve public health than forcing recipe revelation. Additionally, recipe disclosure requirements would be difficult to define and enforce. How detailed must recipes be? How are cooking techniques documented? And how do regulators verify accuracy when chefs often adjust recipes based on ingredient quality and personal judgment? Some argue that consumers deserve complete transparency about what they're eating. But this reasoning ignores that restaurants already disclose safety-relevant information while protecting legitimate business interests. Nevertheless, requiring disclosure of specific ingredients, allergen warnings, and general nutritional information represents reasonable balance between consumer information and business protection. Therefore, expanding existing labeling and disclosure requirements for health-relevant information makes more sense than forcing complete recipe revelation that threatens restaurant businesses without meaningfully improving food safety outcomes. Margaret, I just encountered the most breathtaking vase at Artisan Home Decor that I think you'd absolutely adore. While browsing with my colleague Stephen during lunch break, I came across this extraordinary piece that's designed to look like a graceful swan with its neck arched backward and wings elegantly spread. Instead of a traditional vase opening, the hollow portion where you place flowers is positioned within the swan's back between its raised wings, creating the illusion that flowers are blooming directly from the bird's body. What makes this absolutely stunning is how the entire sculpture is crafted from hand-blown, iridescent glass that shifts between pearlescent white, soft pink, and subtle blue depending on how light hits the surface. Furthermore, the swan's feathers are individually detailed with delicate etching that creates realistic texture. And the base features a reflective mirror finish that makes the swan appear to be floating on water. Not only is it completely functional as a flower vase with a waterproof interior chamber, but the craftsmanship is museum quality with perfectly smooth curves and flawless glasswork throughout. The boutique owner mentioned it was created by a renowned glass artist from Venice who specializes in nature-inspired sculptures, and only 6 pieces were made in this particular design. Unfortunately, the shop prohibits photography of their exclusive artisan pieces to maintain the artist's rights and prevent mass-market copies. Given your extensive collection of decorative vases and your particular fondness for bird-themed artwork, this swan vase would be an extraordinary centerpiece for your dining room table. Should I inquire about reserving it for you?